In 1482, only 10 years before the current year in Baldur's Gate, an event began known as the Second Sundering. This was a period of upheaval, where the gods chosen clashed on Toril, and many of the gods returned to their previous places in the Faerunian pantheon. Au, the Overgod, decided to recreate the Tablets of Fate, and to separate the worlds Aber and Toril. Prior to this, Cyric had killed Mystra, the goddess of magic, which caused a disruption of the weave, the fabric that governs the use of magic. Wild magic became even more unpredictable. Spells misfired and caused all sorts of chaos. This came to be known as the Spell Plague. Part of the Second Sundering was the renewal of the goddess of magic to her proper place, and a healing of the damage that her loss and its consequences had caused. In the aftermath of this event, the gods became quieter than they had been in the past, and new priesthoods sprung up in response. Important to Baldur's Gate was the return of the Dead Three: Bane, the Lord of Darkness, Mirkul, the Lord of Bones, and Baal, the Lord of Murder. They returned seemingly in reduced power, but Baal in particular had an interesting resurrection. The major quest in the original Baldur's Gate had you taking the reins of a character who was the offspring of Baal. Baal was worried he would be destroyed, so he had many children to mitigate the risk. I'm going to spoil the end of the game, so if you don't want to hear it, I'll put a spoiler warning over this part so you can skip to the end. At the end of Baldur's Gate 2's expansion, Throne of Baal, you're given the choice as to whether you will ascend to godhood and take the place of Baal, or if you will allow the essence of Baal to be sealed away. In what is mostly considered the canon ending, Abdel Adrian, the protagonist, chose to give up Baal's essence. He would go on to live well beyond the age of a normal human, over 100 years, and he would become the Grand Duke of Baldur's Gate, up until 1482, 10 years before the new adventure begins. The Baalspawn adventurer who became Grand Duke was attacked and killed during a speech by the last remaining Baalspawn, and in the aftermath of his death, Baal was reborn. He was succeeded by Grand Duke Ravengard, the leader of the Flaming Fist, a mercenary organization based out of Baldur's Gate, and one of the most powerful fighting forces in the Sword Coast. The outcome of the Second Sundering was a relative return to normalcy, the land being healed, and a great rain, and many of the gods are resurrected, if a bit more silent than they were in the past. But this wasn't a good outcome for everyone. For example, Shar took a big hit to her power, though, as the Lady of Loss, perhaps that makes sense. She had attempted to replace the weave with the shadow weave, and had failed. This period ended only a few years before the beginning of Baldur's Gate 3, and signs of it will surely be seen in the city and without. The Nine Hells weren't immune to the effects of the Second Sundering. For anyone that played the beginning of the early access for Baldur's Gate 3, the name Zariel should be familiar. She was originally an angel from the Seven Heavens, but now, after her fall, she's the Archduchess of Avernus, an archdevil in charge of the blood war between devils and demons that never ends. She was also a prominent figure in the descent to Avernus, which took place directly before Baldur's Gate 3. It covers the fall of the city Elturel into the first layer of the Nine Hells, Avernus. Elturel is a city that is right next to Baldur's Gate, and Zariel's plans included both cities. It's very possible that we will see more of her, or her underlings, in Baldur's Gate. In one of the panels from Hell, Larian confirmed that Baldur's Gate 3 will be taking place in the aftermath of Elturel being saved and returned to Faerun. We'll see signs of the conflict, including refugees, as we begin our journey in between Elturel and Baldur's Gate. Tieflings are looked on with suspicion and hatred by the people of Elturel due to their ties to the Nine Hells, which is why many of them are fleeing the city. Even if we don't see Zariel herself, we've already seen Grand Duke Ravengard. He took part in the defense of El Turel, having been in the city when it descended. We saw a glimpse of him in one of the trailers, where a certain man with a villainous countenance became Archduke. I can't imagine that the devils at the beginning of the game are the only ones we'll see for our entire journey. The original CG trailer that released for Baldur's Gate 3 heavily featured Hell, specifically Avernus, so it seems likely that we will be seeing more of our devilish friends in future acts of the game. In fact, in early access we already have been introduced to one such devil, the Cambion, Raphael. I won't go into any detail on that, but I would expect he won't be the only one. As for Grand Duke Ravengard, there were rumors that after he had returned from El Turel, he was abducted on the road and is now located in the Moonrise Towers, a location that has been confirmed to be in Baldur's Gate 3. Returning to Baldur's Gate 3 are two companions from the early games, the Rashamar warrior Minsk and the former harper and half-elf Jaheira. Minsk is a bit more simple-minded, with a one-track mind, to destroy evil wherever he might find it. He is accompanied by his faithful companion Boo, who Minsk claims is a space hamster. Normally a human would be dead after over 100 years, but Minsk somehow found himself petrified and turned into a statue in between the time of the original games and Baldur's Gate 3. Only recently, he was cured of that petrification by pure chance, a misfiring of wild magic. Since then, he has returned to his adventuring ways, including a trip to Avernus with the city El Turel, where he lost his memories when he took a dip into the river Styx. Jaheira is a druid and as such has a strong connection with nature. That connection is what originally led her to join the Harpers, and it seems that she went back to that group after the events of Baldur's Gate 2 and rose up the ranks. She has experienced many tragedies in her time, including the death of her husband Khaled. This has shaped her path and made her a strong and willful character. Not a lot has been revealed about what happened to her in the more than 100 years since we last saw her, but it seems that she will feature heavily. The conflict between the Githyanki and the Illithid has been going on for millennia. The Gith were once a single race that were enslaved by the Illithid. They rose up under the leadership of Gith, but in the process they split into two different factions, the Githyanki and the Githzerai. The main point of contention was the direction of their people. Gith wanted to hunt down and exterminate all of the Illithid. The Githzerai want to pursue other things, such as enlightenment. The Gith that we meet in early access have been the former, a people who are one in their goal, of destroying Illithid wherever they may find them. They are capable of traveling through the astral plane, an alternate plane of existence, where time slows to a crawl. The Githyanki have a pact with Tiamat, Queen of Dragons. This is why you see them in trailers and in early access riding red dragons. The leader of the Githyanki is the Lich Queen of Lakith, and their capital city is called Tunarath. It's located on the back of a deceased deity that they call the One in the Void. The Githyanki are a gruff and straightforward people due to the nature of their constant conflict. In their culture, they have no family structure. They're hatched from eggs and raised by caretakers called Varsh. From an early age, they're trained for combat, and their entire lives they have been raised for the purpose of fighting. The cults of the Absolute are a very important faction in Faerun and in Baldur's Gate, notably for us because they have taken up residence in the Moonrise Towers. Not only that, but they've been steadily gaining followers in the area around Baldur's Gate, and those that have been marked. There are multiple ties to things that I have mentioned here previously. The first, their tie to the Dead Three. The cult is represented by a symbol, and if you look closely at that symbol, it's made up of symbols that represent the Dead Three, the Black Hand of Bane, the Skull of Baal, and the Triangle of Merkul. It seems no coincidence. Another tie is in the True Souls in the cult. True Souls are higher ranked members that have been blessed by their god, and have been implanted with a Mind Flayer tadpole. The last tie is with the Grand Duke Ravengard. If it's true that he has been abducted and taken to the Moonrise Towers, and the cult is in the Moonrise Towers, they must have had a hand in his abduction. The cult is a presence that will definitely be a theme throughout Baldur's Gate 3, so it's good to take note of their actions. They're a bit of a mystery. What is their real purpose? Who is the Absolute? It's likely that we'll soon find out. The world of Toril and the history of the Forgotten Realms is a vast beast, with many stories spanning it. There are plenty of other moving parts that we haven't seen yet that will tie into the story of Baldur's Gate 3. I've done my best to avoid spoiling it for myself while also trying to get to know the world and events surrounding it. I hope that this helped some of you and made you as excited as I am to learn more.